Adaku had everything a woman in her village could dream of: wealth, respect, and a loving husband, Obi. Yet despite all their riches, their home remained empty, silent, void of the one thing Adaku's heart longed for: a child. Every evening she would sit outside their hut, watching other mothers cradle their babies, their laughter and coos filling the air like music. She had tried everything: herbs from the village healer, prayers to the ancestors, and even costly sacrifices at the temple. Nothing worked. The pain of her barren womb weighed on her like a curse. One night, as she lay beside Obi, she whispered her deepest sorrow. "Obi, I cannot go on like this. My heart aches for a child. I want to go to the river and beg the goddess Nai for her blessing." Obi stiffened. He had heard the old stories, the whispered warnings of those who had sought favors from the river goddess. "Adaku, you know the price of such things. A child from the river is never truly ours. It could bring misfortune upon us." But Adaku was desperate. She had already sacrificed her pride, endured the pitying looks of the villagers, and now she was willing to risk everything. Days turned to weeks, and Obi remained firm in his refusal. But Adaku's yearning only grew stronger. The more he resisted, the more she felt like she was drowning in her emptiness. Then, one fateful evening, while Obi was at a village meeting, Adaku saw her chance. She wrapped herself in a dark cloak and slipped away into the night, her feet silent against the dirt path leading to the river. The journey was long, and the wind whispered through the trees as if warning her to turn back. But Adaku pressed on. When she finally reached the riverbank, the water shimmered under the moonlight, casting an otherworldly glow. Kneeling, she clasped her hands together and whispered her prayer. "Great Goddess Nai, hear my plea. I have longed for a child for years. Please bless me with a daughter. I will do anything." For a moment, there was only silence. Then, the river began to ripple, the water glowing with an eerie blue light. Slowly, from the depths, a figure emerged. Tall and graceful, with skin that shimmered like the water itself, Nai stood before Adaku. Her voice, smooth as flowing water, sent chills down Adaku's spine. "My daughter, your wish shall be granted. You will bear a child, a beautiful daughter named Akiki. But know this, she will never cry. No matter what happens, she must never shed a tear." Adaku, overwhelmed with joy, nodded eagerly. "Thank you, great goddess." "Don't now," Nai commanded, her voice firm. "And never look back." With her heart racing, Adaku turned and hurried home, never once glancing behind her. Akiki was different. From the moment she was born, she never cried, not when she was hungry, not when she fell, not even when she was scolded. The villagers whispered about it, calling her strange, but Adaku and Obi only saw her as a blessing. They cherished her, showering her with love, and always granted her every wish, just as the goddess Nai had commanded. Under their care, Akiki grew into a strong, radiant young girl. She was fearless, intelligent, and carried herself with an air of quiet confidence. Her presence alone seemed to bring fortune to her family. Their crops flourished, their cattle thrived, and their wealth only increased. Yet not everyone in the village was happy for them. Chief Bola, a powerful and cunning man, had always resented Obi. For years, they had quarreled over a piece of land that both claimed as their own. While Obi was an honorable man who believed in fairness, Chief Bola was a man of greed. Seeing Obi's prosperity only fueled his jealousy, and deep inside, he longed to see him fall. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Chief Bola sat outside his grand hut, listening to the murmurs of his loyal followers. "Obi's wealth is unnatural," he muttered, his voice dripping with bitterness. "And that child of his, she is not normal. Mark my words, their fortune will not last." His men nodded in agreement, but Bola was not a man of idle threats. He had a plan. Under the cover of darkness, he made his way to a notorious medicine man who was feared across the land for his dark magic. "I need a charm," Bola said, placing a heavy pouch of gold before him. "A curse, one that will bring ruin to Obi and his family." The old medicine man grinned, his teeth yellowed with age. "Very well," he rasped, "but remember, curses have a way of finding their way back." Bola ignored the warning. That night, he took the cursed charms and buried them deep within Obi's farmland, whispering incantations as he did. The deed was done. Now, he only had to wait. The next morning, Obi and Adaku left for their farm as they always did, unaware of the dark spell that had been cast upon their land. The moment their feet touched the soil, an unseen force struck them down. Their bodies collapsed lifelessly to the ground, their souls stolen before they even had a chance to understand what had happened. Hours passed, and back at home, Akiki began to worry. Her parents had never stayed out this long. As the sun began to set, a sense of unease settled in her chest. She could feel it. Something was terribly wrong. Without hesitation, she rushed to the farm, her heart pounding with every step. When she arrived, she froze. Her breath caught in her throat as she saw them lying there motionless. For the first time in her life, Akiki felt an unfamiliar pain rise inside her, an unbearable sorrow, deep and piercing. Her hands trembled as she reached for them, her vision blurring. And then, something impossible happened. A single tear fell. The girl who was never meant to cry had just shed her first tear. And with it, a storm was brewing. The moment Akiki's tear touched the earth, the sky above darkened. A chilling wind swept through the farm, rustling the trees with an eerie whisper. The air felt heavier, charged with something ancient, something powerful. Akiki knelt beside her parents, her hands trembling as she touched their lifeless faces. They were gone. The realization hit her like a crushing wave, stealing the breath from her lungs. She had never known pain like this, never felt such unbearable sorrow. For the first time in her life, she wept, her tears falling freely, soaking into the cursed soil beneath her. Then, she felt it. A shift deep within her, like something awakening, something fierce, something unstoppable. The wind howled louder, swirling dust around her as a strange sensation coursed through her veins. Her body burned with rage, her grief turning into something far greater than sorrow. She clenched her fists, her breath unsteady. "Who did this?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the roaring wind. But she already knew the answer. Chief Bola. The man who had always envied her family, who had sought to bring them down. She could feel his name vibrating through the air, echoing in her bones like a prophecy. He had done this, and he would pay. Akiki rose to her feet, her sorrow now laced with fury. She turned and sprinted back to the village, her heart pounding with the rhythm of vengeance. She didn't stop until she reached the king's palace. Bursting through the grand doors, she fell to her knees before the throne, her face streaked with tears. "Your Majesty," she cried, her voice raw, "my parents are dead. Someone has murdered them. You must help me." The room fell silent. The king, a man known for his cold heart and selfish desires, leaned forward, studying the girl before him. He had heard of Akiki, the girl who never cried, but now here she was, weeping, her face painted with grief. He smiled. "You are truly remarkable," he said, his voice smooth, calculated. "A girl who has never shed a tear until now. And look how beautiful you are in your sorrow." Akiki's stomach twisted. She stared at him, disbelief and rage burning in her chest. "What are you saying?" she snapped. "My parents are dead and you stand there talking nonsense?" The king's eyes darkened. "Watch your tongue, girl." Akiki rose, her gaze locking onto his. "No, you listen to me. If you will not help me, I will find justice myself." The king's patience snapped. "Guards! Caesar!" The guards stepped forward, but before they could touch her, Akiki's eyes flashed a piercing blue. A sudden force rippled through the air, freezing them in place. "If any of you come near me," she warned, her voice like thunder, "you won't live to tell the story." The guards hesitated, fear flashing across their faces. The king, now furious, clenched his fists. "Get out of my sight!" he spat. Akiki turned on her heel, her heart pounding. She had no time for fools. Justice would not come from the throne. It would come from her own hand. With unwavering determination, she marched straight toward Chief Bola's house. He would answer for what he had done, and she would make sure he never hurt anyone again. Akiki's rage burned like a wildfire as she made her way through the village, her steps unshaken, her heart pounding with vengeance. She had wasted time pleading with the king, expecting justice from a man who cared more for his own desires than the suffering of his people. But she was done waiting. If the king would not help her, she would take justice into her own hands. She stormed toward Chief Bola's compound, her fists clenched so tightly that her nails dug into her palms. The village was unusually quiet, as if the air itself held its breath, sensing the storm that was about to be unleashed. As she reached his gate, the guard stepped forward, blocking her path. "You are not welcome here, Akiki," one of them sneered. She lifted her chin, her piercing blue eyes glowing with an eerie light. "Mold," she said, her voice steady, unwavering. The guards hesitated, exchanging nervous glances. There was something different about her, something dangerous. Before they could react, Akiki raised her hand, and a sudden gust of wind swept through, knocking them aside as if they were mere leaves in a storm. She didn't stop to look back. She pushed open the heavy wooden doors and stepped inside. Chief Bola was seated at his table sipping palm wine, his face calm, arrogant until he looked up and saw her. The cup slipped from his fingers, shattering against the ground. "You," he breathed, his voice laced with shock and fear. Akiki took a step forward, her gaze locked onto his. "Did you think I wouldn't find out?" she asked, her voice cold as ice. "Did you think your betrayal would go unpunished?" Bola stumbled to his feet, his mind racing for an escape. I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered, but his eyes betrayed him. He knew exactly what he had done. Akiki exhaled slowly, her fury simmering just beneath the surface. Liar. And then, before his very eyes, she began to change. Her body stretched, twisted, her skin shimmering like polished scales. Her fingers elongated into sharp claws, her once human form dissolving into something ancient, something monstrous. Within moments, she was no longer a girl but a massive serpent, her body coiling around the room like a nightmare come to life. Chief Bola fell backward, his breath coming in shallow gasps. "Please," he whimpered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Have mercy." But there was no mercy left in Akiki's heart. With one swift, deadly strike, she lunged. The village awoke that night to the sound of a terrified scream, one that was quickly silenced. By morning, Chief Bola was no more. His compound lay empty, his presence erased as if he had never existed. As the sun rose, Akiki stood at the river's edge, her human form restored, her heart still heavy with grief. The battle was not over. Justice had only just begun. The village awoke to whispers. The once powerful Chief Bola was dead, his life snuffed out in the stillness of the night. No one knew exactly what had happened, but the fear in the air was thick, undeniable. Some swore they had heard his screams, a desperate, chilling cry that had been cut off too soon. Others claimed to have seen something unnatural slithering through the shadows, a beast that had come to deliver vengeance. But Akiki knew the truth. She stood by the river, watching the water ripple under the morning sun. The weight of what she had done pressed on her chest, but she felt no remorse. Bola had taken everything from her, her parents, her peace, her childhood. He had paid the price for his sins, and she would not lose sleep over it. But fate was not finished with her. The news of Chief Bola's mysterious death spread like wildfire, reaching the ears of the king. He sat on his throne, his face dark with rage. "She dares defy me," he growled, his knuckles turning white as he clenched his fists. "She thinks she is above the law." The elders exchanged nervous glances. They had long feared Akiki's power, and now, with Bola gone, she had proven she was more than just a strange girl, she was dangerous. One of the elders stepped forward. "Your Majesty, we must act before she turns her wrath upon us. If she could destroy Bola, who's to say she won't come for you next?" The king's expression twisted into something cruel. He had wanted Akiki for himself, had been captivated by her beauty and her mystery, but she had rejected him, humiliated him in front of his court. And now, she had shown the entire village that she held power greater than his own. No, he would not allow it. "She must be punished," the king declared, his voice cold. "And we shall start by taking from her what she loves." The elders smirked, pleased with his decision. Revenge was a language they understood well. The next morning, as the sun barely kissed the horizon, the king's men rode out in secret. Their mission was simple: capture Chuki, the man Akiki had fallen in love with, and make her suffer for daring to challenge the throne. Chuki was in the fields when they found him. He had woken up early, unaware that danger was approaching. The first blow came without warning, a heavy strike to his ribs that sent him crashing to the ground. Before he could react, rough hands grabbed him, binding his arms, dragging him away. Hours later, when Akiki returned home, she found only silence. The air felt wrong, heavy with something unspoken. Then, a villager rushed to her, breathless, terrified. "They took him," the woman gasped. "The king's men. They took Chuki." Akiki's blood turned to ice. The king had made his move. Now, it was her turn. Akiki stood frozen, her mind struggling to process the villager's words. "They took him. The king's men took Chuki." Her heart pounded like a war drum. A deep, burning rage swelled inside her, hotter than any fury she had ever known. She had already lost her parents. She would not lose Chuki, too. Without hesitation, she turned on her heel and sprinted toward the palace. Dust ticked up beneath her feet as she ran, her breath coming in sharp, furious bursts. The villagers watched in silence, their gazes filled with both awe and fear. They had seen what happened to Chief Bola. Now they wondered what would become of the king? When Akiki reached the palace gates, she didn't wait for permission to enter. She slammed her fists against the wooden doors, her voice ringing through the courtyard. "Where is he?" she demanded. "Bring him to me now?" The guards flinched, exchanging wary glances. They had heard the whispers, the stories of what Akiki had done to Bola. She was no ordinary girl. She was something else, something otherworldly. Before they could react, the heavy palace doors creaked open. The king himself stepped out, his expression twisted into a smug grin. "You have come," he mused, his voice laced with amusement. "I expected nothing less." Akiki's jaw tightened. "Where's Chuki?" she spat. The king chuckled, shaking his head as if she were a foolish child. "Ah, Akiki. Always so fierce." He gestured and two guards stepped forward, dragging a limp figure between them. "Chuki." Akiki's breath caught in her throat. His face was swollen, his body battered and bruised. His once strong frame now sagged between the guards, barely able to stand. He lifted his head slightly, his eyes searching for her. When he saw her, a weak, broken smile crossed his lips. "Akiki," he rasped. Rage flooded through her, hot and blinding. "You monster!" she hissed, her hands curling into fists. "How dare you!" The king merely shrugged. "You brought this upon yourself. You defied me, and now you pay the price." Akiki's body trembled with fury. She could feel something shifting inside her, something ancient and unstoppable. The air around her crackled as if the very earth recognized her wrath. "You will regret this," she swore, her voice eerily calm. The king only smirked. "Oh, Akiki, you belong to me now, and soon you will see that there is no escaping your fate." She clenched her jaw, her pulse hammering. But deep in her heart, she knew the truth. The king had started a war, and she was going to end it. Akiki stood in the center of the palace courtyard, her entire body trembling not with fear but with rage. Chuki's broken body lay in her arms, his breath shallow, his skin pale. She pressed her hand against his chest, willing him to hold on. "Chuki, stay with me," she whispered. But deep down, she knew. His time was running out. Chuki's fingers brushed against hers, weak but full of love. His swollen lips parted, and with his last breath, he whispered, "I'll always love you." Then, the light in his eyes faded. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, the sky above them darkened. The next morning, as the sun barely kissed the horizon, the king's men rode out in secret. Their mission was simple: capture Chuki, the man Akiki had fallen in love with, and make her suffer for daring to challenge the throne. Chuki was in the fields when they found him. He had woken up early, unaware that danger was approaching. The first blow came without warning, a heavy strike to his ribs that sent him crashing to the ground. Before he could react, rough hands grabbed him, binding his arms, dragging him away. Hours later, when Akiki returned home, she found only silence. The air felt wrong, heavy with something unspoken. Then, a villager rushed to her, breathless, terrified. "They took him," the woman gasped. "The king's men. They took Chuki." Akiki's blood turned to ice. The king had made his move. Now, It was her turn, but he never made it past the palace steps. With one swift, brutal strike, Akiki lunged, her fangs sinking into his flesh. A single scream tore through the night before it was silenced forever. The village was never the same again. In the days that followed, the remaining elders, the same ones who had conspired with the king, vanished one by one. Some said Akiki hunted them in the shadows, delivering justice where the law had failed. Others believed the river goddess Nai had claimed them, punishing them for their wickedness. And Akiki, she was never seen again. Some say she returned to the river, where she was always meant to be. Others believe she still walks among them, watching, waiting, ensuring that no one else suffers the way she did. But one thing was certain: her name would never be forgotten.